All right, one of the most important skills as freight brokers, as business owners, we have to hone in on, get really good at, is our ability to be able to see what's coming, to be able to anticipate what's coming, especially right now in the environment that we're living in the economic environment, the political environment that we live in today. We have to be able to look out there and see what's coming and then put a plan in place to navigate, to get through these obstacles and challenges that you and your businesses will be presented with. There's no two ways about that. We have some extraordinary things that are happening right now in the United States of America, in the world. We know we've been dealing with this COVID issue for quite some time. It's a pandemic. I get to understand now we may be coming out of it, but we still have some very serious challenges as that is concerned. And we also have an issue that's just as big or bigger than the pandemic, and that is inflation. Some of the greatest financial minds are sounding the alarm on inflation right now. Charlie Munger just said recently that inflation is a threat to democracies. He also said that inflation is probably the biggest threat that we face outside of nuclear war. Imagine that. So this inflation thing is very serious. And what is inflation? Well, inflation is just the progressive rise in cost of goods and services within an economy. And our economy right now is definitely experiencing a rise in cost of goods and services. If you go to the grocery store, you'll definitely be able to feel that. If you go to get gas, you'll definitely feel that. You had to have been living under a rock not to have experienced some of the amazing, outrageous costs that are going on right now. And that's because of the printing machine. You see, whenever we get into trouble as a country, instead of figuring out a way how to produce to get our way out of what we're in, we go in and we start winding that money machine. And every time there's a problem, just go and print more money. So when you're printing money, you're putting excess dollars into the marketplace, into the economy. And now the prices of goods and services will rise. That just comes as a natural occurrence. That's just how it works. So when those prices start to rise, then the inflation rate starts to increase. We're usually at about a 2.5% to 3% inflation rate. Well, we just got a new report this month that says inflation is at about 7.5%. So what is your plan? How do you navigate this environment that we're currently living in? How do you make sure that your business survives? That's why I think it's important that we have a conversation today and talk about what the plan is for the environment that we currently live in and how are you going to get your business to the other side. Now, what we've been told, at least up until recently by the Biden administration, by Chairman Jerome Powell of the Federal Reserve, is that it was very likely that inflation was just transitory. It would come in for a period of time and then it would make its transition. Unfortunately, it has not transitioned. It's right on top of us and it seems to be increasing. And of course, that makes people that are in the know very much concerned. Just recently, Carl Icahn, billionaire investor, just said the money printing machine has to stop. But since there's a very real possibility that it's not going to stop, here are some things that we're doing in our business to be proactive to combat inflation. Now, the first thing that we had to do was the thing that most people don't like to do. Most people don't like to increase prices because when you increase prices, they think that it might cause a rift between you and your customers. But we're in a different environment right now. We're in an environment where inflation is running out of control, where gas prices are running out of control. So anytime you have increased prices, you have to also increase your costs. You can't still do lanes at the same prices that you were doing those lanes before the pandemic. It's not going to work out that way. You will run yourself out of business trying to give those discounted prices. You have to give them what the market calls for, and the price right now is definitely going to be higher than pre-pandemic. So be prepared for that. Go ahead and talk to your customers about that. Go ahead and kind of grease the skid, so to speak, so they understand. Now, don't get me wrong. Your customers already know what's going on. So it's not going to take a whole lot of explaining for you to do, but you want to make sure that your prices are competitive, but you definitely have to increase prices during this time. That's at least how we see it. All right, next up, let's talk about cheap money. Now, everybody talks about how cheap money is right now. And hey, when money is cheap, you need to go ahead and get you some of it, because it doesn't mean that it's going to be cheap tomorrow. Well, especially now that the Federal Reserve is contemplating raising rates, and they more likely will raise rates. It's just a question of how much they will raise rates. And when rates rise, the cost to borrow money rises as well. So the idea is to go ahead and borrow money now while rates are low, and that way you have access to capital. If you wanted to make some different changes to your business, maybe you wanted to bring some tech changes in, automate some services, make it so that you move loads faster, more efficiently, then maybe that would be a good idea. Then you have a purpose, you have a reason for borrowing the money. Some people go and borrow money during these times and say, okay, I don't have anything that I want to do with it, but I'm gonna have it just in case something comes up. I don't suggest you do that. The reason why I wouldn't borrow money right now, and we are not borrowing any money for our business right now, is because times are too uncertain. There's too much uncertainty out there right now for me. So I really don't need it to go out and do any upgrades in the business, so I just don't see the need to take that kind of risk, to go out and borrow money. Because people say it's cheap money, but you still have to pay it back, and you have to pay it back with interest, even if it's a smaller amount. Because to me, there's no money that's cheap. If I have to pay you back and pay you back with interest, then it's not cheap. So it's just how you look at it, I guess. But I would highly suggest that if you do borrow money right now, just make sure that you have a good plan. Cross your T's and dot the I's. Make sure you're not going to get money just because it's so-called cheap. Next up, what we're doing right now is we're increasing our on-hand cash. Because of all that's going on, when there's uncertainty, I like to make sure that I increase my cash position, because you never know what may happen. Maybe you'll have a big market crash, and then it might be time to go back and reinvest more into the market. If you have a big cash position, you can take some of that cash and insert it into the market. I am not a market timer. I'm just saying, build my cash up right now for uncertain times. And if opportunities become available, then I can take advantage of those opportunities. If it comes that I need cash, because you never know what may happen, then I'll have that cash available. So I think right now is a time to increase my on-hand cash just in case something happens that we don't foresee. Now, the next thing that we're doing to try and get ahead of the power curve is we're going ahead and buying equipment that we need now. The reason why we're going ahead and getting it now is because we kind of feel like that prices are not going to start to decrease, they're actually going to increase. So we think next year this time, prices may even be higher on the equipment that we see that we need to buy maybe in the next 8 to 10 months. So we're gonna go ahead and buy that equipment now, thinking that we'll get a better price now than we would 8 to 10 to 12 months from now. So you might wanna look at that as well. Take a look at your situation. You may not be in the same situation that I am, but it might be a good idea if you take a look at buying equipment now, if you think prices will rise in the coming time. So now that's what I wanted to share with you today. This inflation issue is a big problem, and to ignore it, to not give it the attention that it deserves, in my opinion, would be a very big mistake. As a matter of fact, I think it would be quite foolish, especially with seeing what's happening right before your eyes. So I wish you the very best in your life and business. If you want to learn more about the freight broker business, I'll leave a free link in the description. It's my 5-video series titled How the Load Movement Process Works. It gives you a chance to come into the office with me and watch over my shoulders. I move loads, talk to shippers and carriers. That way you can get an understanding of how the business works before you come into it. And then if you want to know more about how to become a full-time freight broker, I'll leave a free video right here. So until the next time, I wish you the very best in your life and business. See you at the top, because the bottom is much too crowded.